Justin Wilcox climbed tiredly out of his car. It was Friday, and it had been a long and tiring work week. Not only was there one problem after another at work, but his thoughts kept returning to domestic problems. His wife Lois had been keeping a very aloof demeanor lately. Heck, he told himself, she'd been getting more and more aloof for a year now. It seemed to have started when the company she worked for fired her from her clerical job to make her administrative assistant to the president. Lois and Justin had been married for 7 years, and at least for Justin, it had been a pretty good marriage for almost 6 years. They'd gotten married as soon as he'd gotten his master's degree. The only negative for Justin in his marriage was that Lois kept putting off having children. However, even if Lois had never wanted to have children, Justin would still have been content. That was how much he was in love with his wife. Justin was vice president of a small cybersecurity firm. He had left one of the largest security firms, G4S, to help start a new firm, Telco Security. In the 5 years that Justin had been with the firm, they had managed to land several large contracts with the government and had made a fair amount of contacts with some of the largest businesses in the country. They were currently stretched pretty thin, handling all the work they had. The company was in the process of hiring 10 new employees in anticipation of the 7 new contracts that were due. When Justin earned his MBA and a separate master's degree in computer science, he was hired by G4S, one of the largest security companies in the country. Shortly thereafter, Justin and Lois were married. At first, they dated sporadically, but eventually began seeing each other on a regular basis. Truth be told, Justin felt that Lois had just agreed to be with him, and it bothered him. Yes, Lois was gorgeous, but Justin wasn't chopped liver either. He was 6 feet 2 inches tall, 190 pounds, with blonde hair and blue eyes. If there was anything he lacked to make it onto the list of perfect husbands in Lois's view, it was that he wasn't rich. Finally, Lois seemed to have reconciled herself to this marriage and became the loving wife Justin had dreamed of. That was until Augustus Grant came into their lives. 2 years after their marriage, despite Lois's persistent objections, Justin took a job at Telco. The initial friction over the job change had eventually died down when Lois realized that their lifestyle hadn't suffered in the slightest, and they'd even started talking about having children. But almost 13 months ago, Lois had started working for August Grant, the president and CEO of Triplex Financial. It was a hedge fund that dealt in risky investments that were supposed to make huge sums of money no matter what happened in the stock market. Justin knew that successful hedge funds could make obscene amounts of money, but they were also risky. Before Lois had taken the job, Justin had done a little research on his own. The idea behind this part of the financial industry was to develop investments that would bring in large sums of money. However, if they started to fail, the hedge firms had an exit strategy. Of course, in a rising market like this, almost all investment vehicles worked. However, if the market suddenly began to correct, things could go south quickly. Justin was surprised to learn that Triplex hired almost as many scientists and accountants as brokers. They were there to design investment products that maximized returns while offering reasonable expectations of exiting the investment with a minimal amount of loss if it started to go south. Justin also learned that Triplex was well established in the industry. Knowing this, Justin was pleased that Lois was working for a quality company. August Grant was a 51-year-old man who had worked his way up the corporate ladder. Justin had met him once at a Triplex event and had found the man to be overbearing, but not without considerable charm. However, Justin had been uncomfortable with Lois and her boss's overly familiar interactions. When he commented on it, however, Lois mocked his jealousy. As she pointed out, Augustus was 22 years older than she was. Still, Justin was uncomfortable. As time went on, Lois began to distance herself from her husband. She became more critical of what Justin did and spent more time at work. Their sex life began to dwindle, and they fought more and more often. It was heartbreaking to watch day after day as his wife drifted away from him, and the only person he felt comfortable talking to was his administrative assistant, Jennifer. She always listened to him and didn't judge. Even though his whole body shuddered at the thought of confrontation, the atmosphere in his home had become oppressive. Regardless of the consequences, Justin knew he had to follow through. The subject of Augustus Grant and his inappropriate relationship with his wife had to be broached. Justin tiredly climbed the porch steps and entered his home. He found his wife sitting at the kitchen table sipping wine from a glass. "Justin, sit down. We need to talk," she said coldly. "We need to talk" sounded like an icy blow to his chest. They were words that instilled complete fear in the heart of any spouse who heard them. Even though Justin dreaded this confrontation, he was sure it was coming and prepared as best he could. "Yes, this conversation is long overdue," Justin said softly. "I've thought long and hard about the fact that we've been drifting apart. I think I've let this situation go on for too long, and we need to resolve things right now." Justin paused for just a second and then continued. "Lois, I wanted you to know that I've loved you from the very first moment I met you. I thought we had a really good marriage until you started working for Augustus Grant." Lois interrupted him with a wave of her hand. "Let me finish this first. I don't want to get into a discussion with you, Justin. I want a divorce." Well, there it was. The end of his marriage. Everything Justin had done to try and save it had failed. A sense of loss overwhelmed him. A feeling of sadness for what had been but was now gone seemed to empty his stomach. His wife's demand was not unexpected. He had been expecting something like this for months now, but now that it was spoken aloud, it shook him more than he'd realized. His shoulders slumped and he leaned back in his chair. Sighing, Justin asked the obvious question. Why? The expression on Lois's face was hard, devoid of any compassion. She squared her shoulders and sported a thin, unpleasant smile. "I fell in love with Augustus, and he asked me to marry him. I can truly say I love him as I never loved you. And he's much better in bed than you are. Besides, he's rich, and he can provide me with a much better life than you ever could." That last statement made Justin tense up, but if Lois noticed the impact of his unpleasant and insensitive words, she didn't show it in any way. It was painful to realize that this woman had absolutely no feelings left for him. It also confirmed what he had suspected for some time. Lois had been cheating on him for months. After so many years of love spent together, how could this woman be so cold-blooded? After months of reflection, there was no longer any doubt about the relationship between Lois and Augustus. He knew that his wife had always been a keeping up with the Joneses type of person. Still, it pained him that Lois felt that his efforts for her weren't enough. He'd never refused her anything. If she wanted new clothes, Justin let her buy them. When she wanted a Jaguar, he rented it for her, even though he thought the car was a piece of crap. When she wanted a bigger house, they went house hunting at the country club estate. Justin had let Lois pick out the house she wanted, and even though the mortgage was a lot more than Justin wanted, he had bought it. The fact that none of this was enough hurt Justin, but he held his tongue. Instead, he pointed out the obvious. He just divorced his third wife. How long do you think he'll keep you to himself? "Oh, Justin, don't be an ass. I know this is hard for you, but you're just going to have to accept that our marriage is over. I hope it won't be hard on you." Lois then pulled an envelope out of her purse. "I think you'll find that the terms of the divorce are quite favorable to you," Lois said as she unfolded the papers and held them out to her husband. "If I had wanted to, I could have made your life very difficult and expensive. Instead, I decided to be generous. I'm losing all interest in this house. However, I'm taking half of our checking and savings accounts, and I want half of our investment portfolio. August will pay off the rent on the Jaguar. He says it's a terrible car, and he's going to buy me a brand new Porsche." Justin looked into his wife's eyes and saw the cold indifference that radiated toward him. Lois looked at him like he was a bug. Justin decided not to tell her that he thought the Porsche was an overpriced piece of metal and plastic. Instead, he pointed to the divorce document lying in front of him. "What else is in that document?" "There are a few pieces of furniture I want to take back, and I want to keep all my jewelry and clothes. Also, I'm not asking for any alimony, and I won't be asking for any of your 401(k)s. "Lois, why are you doing this?" Justin asked, picking up the divorce papers lying in front of him. "This house has at least $200,000 of equity. The investments and all of our savings aren't worth half that amount." "My reason is very simple," Lois said, and her eyes narrowed. "I want a quick divorce. It was August's suggestion. He said if I played hardball, you could drag out the divorce for a year or more. We both want to get married as soon as my divorce is final. However, what is spelled out in those divorce papers is contingent on you agreeing to it and expediting the divorce. If you fight me on this, I will go along with anything, and August assures me that I will get everything I ask for." Justin's shoulders slumped even lower and he sighed. "Well, I guess we have nothing more to discuss. I've avoided facing the truth and not seeing the cracks in our marriage. But God is my witness, I've tried to no avail. It's obvious now that our marriage has been over for a long time. Tomorrow I'll show these papers to my lawyer, and if he says everything is in order, I'll sign them. But Lois, I really think you should reconsider this. I don't think this divorce is in your best interest." "Justin, I don't want to argue with you. My decision has been made, and I want this divorce, and I want it to happen as soon as possible." Justin shrugged, and a tear rolled down his cheek. Even though he had known for months that his marriage was dying, it was heartbreaking to realize that the woman he loved so much no longer had any feelings for him. It was so sad that that part of his life was now dead. "Okay, Lois, I won't fight. I also want this to be a clean break," Lois said, narrowing her eyes even more. "I don't want you to dream about me. I don't need emails or texts. I don't need cards or flowers or anything else. We'll divorce and I'll move on to a different social circle. I don't want you to embarrass me." Justin just nodded and stood up. Lois got to her feet as well and headed for the door. "Just remember," she shouted over her shoulder, "if my lawyer doesn't get the papers signed within a week, it's going to be awful." As soon as Lois left, Justin pulled out his cell phone and called his assistant Jennifer. She had been with him since he started at the telco, and she was a pillar of support. Jennifer was not only a great assistant, but she had helped him deal with the way his marriage was crumbling. Justin felt he could always talk to her about anything, business or personal. As Justin waited for Jennifer's response, a comparison of the two women flashed through his mind. Lois was stunningly beautiful with a flawless figure. Jennifer, on the other hand, was pretty just above average and several pounds overweight. Lois could be loving and affectionate, or she could be cold and bitchy. Jennifer was the eternal optimist. Besides being an extremely efficient secretary, she was able to lift Justin's spirits just by listening to him pour out his soul, and he needed to talk to her now about the final collapse of his marriage. When Jennifer answered, Justin said with a sigh, "Lois just left." "Did you give her the papers?" Jennifer asked immediately. "No, I didn't get a chance to do anything," Justin replied defensively. "But Justin, you promised that you would give her the divorce papers today." "I know, but Lois gave me her divorce papers first, and the agreement she offered, and it's much better than the one I was prepared to offer her." "Are you kidding?" Jennifer was completely surprised. "How is it better?" "I was ready to give her half of the share of the house, but she doesn't want any of it. I'd give her half of the checks, savings, and investment portfolio, plus pay the lease on her Jaguar. All she wants is half the money, and she said August would pay the lease on the Jaguar. Lois also wants to take a few pieces of furniture from the house and all her jewelry and clothes." "What about alimony and your partnership in the telecommunications company?" "You know I was willing to pay her alimony of $3,000 a month for 5 years. However, Lois said she didn't want anything. But really, if she's going to marry Augustus right now, it's a moot point. But what stunned me was that I was willing to pay her $5 million for half my share of the company. But Lois didn't even bring it up. To tell you the truth, I don't think she knows that I own a third of a telecommunications company. Lois was so angry when I left G4S that she never paid any attention to what I was doing at the new company, and when she discovered that her lifestyle wasn't going to change, she didn't care." "But why is she so generous?" Jennifer asked with some bewilderment. "According to Lois, it was Grant's idea. Both he and Lois want a quick divorce, so they can get married." "Oh, Justin, I can't tell you how happy I am," Jennifer blurted out. "This means we'll be able to get married before our baby is born." Epilogue. A year after the divorce was finalized, Lois was waiting for August in the lobby of the country club when Justin walked in. He spotted her and smiled. "Hey, Lois, how are you doing?" he said, waving his hand. "What are you doing here?" Lois hissed. "I told you when we were getting divorced that you should stay away from me." Before Justin could say anything, the front door opened and August walked in. He noticed Justin immediately, and his eyes narrowed. "Mr. Wilcox, this is a private club. You need to leave immediately. Your presence here is unwelcome." Just as Justin was about to reply, the club's secretary came out of his office and smiled at Justin. "Mr. Wilcox, welcome to the Tequesta Country Club. Here are your membership cards, share certificate, rules and regulations, and a schedule of upcoming events. I also want you to know that there will be a dance this coming Friday, and we will have a group of 7. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Grant, I would like to introduce you to Justin Wilcox. He and his family are our newest members." August's face turned purple and Lois's jaw dropped. Then the two of them turned and sped away. A moment later, the door opened again, and Jennifer began rolling in a stroller with a little boy looking around. Justin rushed to hold the door open, then kissed his wife and son before turning to the club secretary again. "I think we're going to be very happy here." 4 years after that incident, Justin and Jennifer were sitting at their friend's table during another club dance. Jennifer had hired a babysitter and booked a room at a nearby Hilton hotel. She promised Justin that tonight she would rock his world without the slightest disturbance. As they sat there, Jennifer suddenly patted Justin on the shoulder. "Isn't that Lois?" she asked, pointing to the woman and man who had just entered. Justin looked closer, and recognition came slowly. He didn't recognize the man at all, but the woman was Lois. However, she was much thinner and looked older. She was still a very attractive woman, but Justin wasn't sure if he would have recognized her if they had met on the street. "She looks so thin. I wonder if she's been sick. Besides, who is this guy she's with?" Justin asked his wife. "No, she hasn't been sick," said Jennifer. "But Lois has been having a hard time lately. And the man she's sitting with is her new husband, Guy Hampton." "What happened to Augustus? Did he kick her to the curb?" "No, he didn't, because he died of a heart attack while in bed with his new administrative assistant. It happened 2 days before their 5th anniversary. "Why didn't I know that?" Justin asked with bewilderment in his voice. "I'm sure you heard about his death because it was on the news," Jennifer said patiently. "However, you probably didn't catch the connection because they used his real name, Mortimer. His real name is Mortimer Augustus Grant." "Oh, that explains it," Justin said, smiling at his wife. "But if Lois wasn't sick, why is she so thin?" "She had a rough 2 years after her husband died. Lois only got $200,000 from August's will after he died. The rest of his money went to his children by his first wife and to charitable organizations. Poor Lois was stuck with the prenup she had signed shortly before they were married. It said if they were married less than 5 years, Lois only got $50,000 for each year. If she'd been married 5 years, she'd get at least $2 million and their beachfront condo." "That still doesn't explain why she's so thin," Justin asked, studying his ex-wife. "She tried to keep up appearances, but you know it's expensive to live in this neighborhood and be a member of the country club. She quickly ran out of money and her friends abandoned her. For a while, she subsisted on food stamps and lived in a rat trap in an urban Alhambra neighborhood. Lois finally married Guy, and they bought a house on the golf course. Guy is a partner in an accounting firm. He's making pretty good money, but nowhere near what August was making." Justin turned to take another look at his ex-wife while Jennifer continued to explain Lois's plight. When he looked back across the dance floor to where Lois was sitting, their eyes met. She smiled at him and stood up. Justin was startled when he realized she was heading straight for him. "I think she's coming this way," he told Jennifer in a slightly panicked voice. "It's okay," she said, patting his arm. "I'm pretty sure she doesn't bite." "Do you mind if I ask your husband to dance?" Lois asked Jennifer. "Provided you bring him back safe and sound," Jennifer said with a chuckle. "I have big plans for him tonight." "I promise he'll come back in good condition," Lois said with a smile. She then took Justin's hand and helped him to his feet. Justin cast a disgruntled look at his wife. For a few seconds they danced in silence. Then Lois began to speak. "I'd forgotten how good of a dancer you are. We used to love to dance, didn't we?" "Yes, we did," Justin agreed. "We used to do a lot of fun things." Lois tensed slightly, but they continued to dance for another 15 seconds or so in silence. Then Lois sighed. I've wanted to talk to you for a long time, but I've never had the courage. I wanted to tell you how sorry I am for what I did to you, to us. I'm sorry too, Justin said, and then cleared his thoughts. Yes, I'm sorry that our marriage fell apart because you fell in love with Augustus and decided to divorce me. However, what they say about God is true. When he closes one door in front of you, he opens another. Jennifer became that other door for me. Besides, I'd like you to know that any pain or anger I felt toward you is long gone. I'm glad, Justin, Lois said with a sigh. You deserve to be happy. As for me, I don't deserve happiness at all. But with Guy's love, I hope to deserve it someday. I hope you do find your happiness, Justin said affectionately. They danced in silence for a few more seconds before Justin spoke. It's kind of funny when I think back to the last conversation we had. The very day you gave me your divorce papers, I was going to hand you my own. I didn't know you were going to do it that day, but I figured you'd sue me soon enough. August said it would be best if I filed first and you accepted my terms. Well, he was right, Justin admitted. However, the terms I was willing to offer were much more favorable to you. I was willing to split everything 50-50ths and buy my stake in Telco from you. I didn't even know you owned a part of Telco until you came to light 2 years later, Lois admitted. When I found out, I was furious and wanted to sue you. But August just laughed and told me that we had no prospects in this case. We outsmarted ourselves. When the music ended, Justin and Lois pulled away from each other. A tear rolled down Lois's cheek. Justin, all those years we were married, I thought I was too good for you. The truth was that you were too good for me. I wish you all the best in life. I wish you the same, Lois, Justin said as he watched his ex-wife walk back to her husband. Justin then turned and saw Jennifer watching him with a smile. He smiled back at his wife and thought to himself how lucky he was and how much he loved his wife. Then his face brightened as he remembered that she had promised to turn his world upside down. It was time to get to the best part of today's activities.